And first of all, thank you so much for joining this conversation and taking off your time to listen to my experiences. I had two near-death experience, so I just feel so grateful that you have taken your time of your life just to listen to this message or to watch it. And I feel very honored to have been invited to actually share my story here, my experiences. Um, Before I start, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I see I have a couple of friends here, Bob and Judy, and I just send you my love to you guys because I see that you're on board here. And so before I start, I always thought to say something that actually beyond our experience and beyond our near-death experience, beyond everything, the big message, I think, for everyone who has and for myself, why I do these videos and why I actually accept to be invited. It's not for me to be all there. It's actually to to just bring some sunshine and some encouragement, some light, some hope to anyone who will actually listen to my experience, my two near-death experiences today. It's just to show you that we are uh, existing beyond this reality and we are extremely loved. And that's just to start. I would like to share those realities to everyone who actually will watch, is watching today and will watch later on. So I am French speaking. I grew up in Belgium, Europe, which is also bilingual, French and Dutch. Um, I also lived in France, so my very first language is actually French. I was bathed in that culture most of my life in Europe, and I I will not go all the way to all my life story because then we need like 10 meetings. But I will try to be very concise to just focus on my two experiences. Grew up in Belgium with my two sisters, shipped by my parents in a all girls Catholic boarding school. They were busy making money and traveling the world, so they forgot about us for about 9 years in the boarding school. And then eventually we got to know them. We realized that we had parents. And I mean, that's a long story that I will try to concise. I'm actually writing my book as well, so hopefully it's going to come out one day. So my life has been a lot of struggle, trying, our parents just divorced, never took care of us. And my two sisters later on had found their way in life to survive. And I was left alone when I was 16 in Brussels, in a city like Washington, D.C., to actually take care of myself. So I just decided that, okay, everybody has forgotten me and I will show the world that I'm somebody. So at 16, I went to high school and I worked in the evening, weekends. I put myself in college, worked 24/7, worked all year round without vacation. And then realized that life was, I finally, after college, found a job in the Royal Thailand Embassy. So from nothing, I became like that, a marketing officer in the diplomatic field. And that shifted my life. And from being forgotten, I was going to all those cocktail parties and high-level political events and diplomatic, evenings as well. And I worked there as a marketing officer in the Royal Thai Embassy in Brussels. That office that I was working for, which was the customs department, was back then the only office for the whole European countries that were dealing with Thailand. Back then, every import-export situation. So I worked there for 7 years, and it was just amazing. They were wonderful. Um, the Thai culture is very gentle, except, you have good and bad in every world. But my experience was really a very positive one. And while I was having everything, I realized that deep down in my heart, something was missing, because I knew lack. I knew poverty. I knew being alone without parents. I knew sufferance. I knew rejection and abandonment. So even though I had actually discovered that amazing world, and I have to say that regardless of the level of life, whether it's being, because I've seen king and queens, I've seen ambassadors, and regardless of the level of society, everybody's human and everybody deals with the same issue. I've interacted with everyone, and they have the same family issues, children issues, relationship issues, maybe a little bit smoother because of the financial burden that's maybe not there, but everybody's on earth to trying to live their own life. And so I looked for more, and time it was us. We were happy. We didn't care about anyone else. It was, we were just, I was so ambitious. I wanted to arrive. And in Brazil, my ex-husband and I, we were having a nice dinner outside in Copacabana, and suddenly a child came and tried to beg for food. He was about 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and he had that plastic box to give them food. So we felt very embarrassed suddenly to be there in our selfish vacation, and that child was on a cardboard begging for food. And we actually gave them food. And then they went to the next table, and there were business people, local business people, and they were probably used to poverty and misery. And even there were lots of food left, but they chased a child before they could even give them, they wouldn't give them. So I realized that when I look at the child go further, I realized that actually that child was going to give the food he got from us. He shared it with a younger girl that was also on sleeping on a cardboard. And that's when I realized, I said, there is something wrong in life. I need to know the purpose of life. I need to know why I'm here on earth, and what, there is something more. And that was the beginning of my spiritual search. I wanted to know why some people were, ambassadors, and then other were just on a cardboard begging for food. Because I don't know if you've been in Brazil, but when I was in Rio, I saw after when the sun goes down, there's a carpet of kids sleeping on cardboards, and that's actually assessing ourselves, how happy we can be with what we have. When you go and visit the world and see that, you can actually count your blessings. And so I came back. I looked for the meaning of life with my then husband, and we look everywhere. And for me, because I was raised in a Catholic environment, I actually went back to the gospel. And I said, well, I need to find spirituality. Where can I find it? And for me, the only way that I could find, I didn't know anything else. I went actually, first of all, I went to a spiritual bookstore where they were actually having that book of a priest that was in contact with deceased people. And that those deceased people were talking about how was that other world. And one of them told him that Jesus was one of the prince in the universe. And I said, oh, I never thought of looking there, because everything Christian, everything Catholic, everything, I had just rejected it, because the nun that was mainly taking care of us in the boarding school was a horrible person. It was a very bleak childhood. So I didn't want anything that had to do with something that would remind me of my childhood. But I said, oh, I had looked in everything, and I said, well, maybe that's the way for me. So we actually, to a long story short, we became both, we went both to Bible college, to seminary, and we became missionaries. I left my amazing life, and I decided, you know what, I want to I want to give love to everyone. I discovered love through Christ. And I said, I want to give that to other people like me that have had, despair in life. And so we went to Bible college, and there was good and bad there because I was a woman. So I left that embassy where we were all respected to go to a very secular, very strict Christian. It was not a Catholic, it was a non-denominational place, but women were actually looked down and couldn't pray, couldn't do anything. We were there to support the husband. And I was like, that's not why I left such a big life. I left because I want to be also making a difference in this world. So I went through that period in my life. I'm telling all that because it's linked to my near-death experience. We left the Bible college. We became missionary in the north of France. And during that time, my ex-husband and I got really issues relationship-wise. We had the most fantastic life. I do not, today after my near-death experience, I'm open to every spirituality, everyone that can connect to the light and love. Back then, that was my road. And I have to say that nowadays, a lot of people criticize everything that comes from a Christian background. I have just to say that during those years, I have met wonderful people. So I'm not criticizing any faith, any religion from me personally. I only want to see the heart of people, the beauty of each people's heart. That's what matters. It's not which denomination you are, which religion you are. I think God is above all that. He looks at the heart. He looks how compassionate you are for others, who we are, how we live our life, how we love ourselves, how we impact others in our life. But back then, I didn't have that knowledge before my NDE. So that was the way I had found to extend myself to others. But in the relationship, and so I've met the most beautiful people that would give their coat to a beggar in the middle of winter. So I would not go that way, because I know a lot of times in the spiritual world, everything is okay, but when we talk about Jesus or Christ, it becomes like people cringe because of the historical background and the manipulation and the hurts many of us have had in that environment. But it's not all. There's also a good part of it that I have also witnessed. So long story short, our relationship got impacted. We left the ministry, we divorced, and I decided I don't want anything ever again that is a ministry. When I was in the ministry, I did love the part I was in, because I would go and speak in Scotland, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in France. And my message back then was not a message of condemnation and guilt. I have to mention that. It was always a message of courage, encouragement, love, healing, compassion. So that was actually always what I had in my life. So long story short, we divorced. I go back to Belgium. That was all happening in France. I go back to Belgium, and I meet an American man, and then a long story short, I end up in the US after a year and a half of dating. And when we arrived in the US, from being the most romantic person and the most, I was European and French. And French, in our culture, we're very straightforward. We are not, we say what we think. So for me, I thought, and here I met a Southerner, and for me, I thought, okay, he is the way he is. He was sending me flowers, and I mean, he was the most romantic person, opening doors, and I thought, okay, because in Europe, if a man is mean, he's going to show you that right away. He's not going to try to get your heart by being all amazing nice. And so we arrived here, and from the day of the wedding, he became really abusive. And from being into a from being in a nice dream that my life had a new start, God had given me a new start in the US. Suddenly, I was, and my daughter and I were in an abusive situation with an abusive husband, verbally a lot, but it started to become physical as well. And here I was with my daughter in a country I didn't know. I had to start all over again. I didn't know the healthcare system. I didn't know the banking system. I didn't even know any brand of product. Which toothpaste is a good one. So I would spend like a couple of hours in front of a store to just to check which one is a good brand. So when we move in and uproot ourselves in a new country, it's like going into a new planet. Everything is different. The way, I had been raised, I had learned English with British teachers, and then I arrived in the US and I didn't understand the American accent. It took me 6 months to understand because I was used to the British accent. And so it's a lot of little details, but so we finally escaped that relationship with the help of his, his family were the most wonderful people. So we ended up, I mean, maybe he wasn't used to, he wasn't used to be in a relationship. I don't want to put all the dark blame on him. And maybe he actually he was probably just not used to being married. Maybe it didn't suit him. So eventually my daughter and I left, and I was alone in the US. It's always a difficult time to share that. That's why sometimes I take myself back, because I'm trying to say a nice thing for a very sad situation. But then my daughter and I, we left. We were on our own. I had to start everything from scratch in the US with no friends, nobody knowing anyone. But I knew my professional expertise. So I went to the trade center here in town, and gave my resume, and they englobed me into the women club, and that's where I found my first job, again in public diplomacy. But then later on I shifted into technology because I had a daughter. I was a single mother, and the company I was working, and I'm still working, which is a fantastic company, allowed me to work from home a lot, and that's how I was able to raise my daughter. So here I am alone with my daughter, starting everything again, having to work so hard to get somewhere. And I'm working day and night. I'm working day with my daughter. I'm helping her at night so that she could, just a moment. It was a difficult time. So I'm working at night and day to just give her a future, so that she can become somebody as well in a country that wasn't ours in the beginning. And doing that, I overextended myself, and I developed arrhythmia. And at the same time, I felt like I had arrived at the end of everything I can endure. It had been a long life, and I had tried to be happy, and things had not worked out the way I thought it would. And so emotionally, I had arrived to the end of what I can endure. I was not suicidal at all, but I had just arrived at the end of everything I can endure. And at the same time, physically, I was overextending myself to start a new life in a country that I had to learn everything from, and make sure my daughter had a future. And that's when I developed the arrhythmia. I went to the cardiologist, and he actually told me that I had arrhythmia, and gave me some medications in case of a crisis, so that it would slow down my heart. And what I call it, like, I just say that I had an unconscious overdose. That's how I say that, because I was so afraid to have a new crisis. I don't know if anyone here has had arrhythmia, but it's really extremely frightening. Your heart races and you have nothing that you can stop. Even if you lay down, it's not going to stop. It's not going to calm. It's really very frightening. And you have the impression that you actually you're going to die because you can't control. And so I was so afraid to have a new crisis that I took the medication when my heart was totally at peace and slow. But the medication really retake the heart slow. So my two near-death experience happened, and it was confirmed by a friend who is an anesthesiologist at Duke here in Raleigh. So what happened was I had two near-death experiences. The first one was probably a sleep apnea, and the second one was the heart stop. So everything happened within the month. So I'm taking the first one. I take that medication, and as soon as I lay my head on the bed, I actually see myself above and I see my lifeless body there. It just and in front of me, at the end of my bed, I have two huge. I have two. How can I say that? I have two huge beings of light. They were probably about 10 feet high, huge white robe of light. They had those very. And I'm sorry, I have an outfit. It looks like I've put it upside down, but I have not. It's the model. I'm just looking at that. It's like the model is like that. So in case people think of that. So that those beings were in front of me, and they had blondish, whitish hair, and they were filled with light. They were very, very powerful, very strong. They were looking at me, very, very peaceful, but very powerful. You could tell they were extremely evolved spirits, and they had a divine strength and peace. And behind them, and that is something I for many years I never shared this, Andy, because I didn't know if people were ready to receive it. But this first one, behind them was a spaceship made of light, a spaceship of light, and it was open. And they said to me telepathically, Yvonne, it's time to go. Those words, no more words. Yvonne, it's time to go. Like this earth was over. What I had experienced on this planet was over, and it was just time to go to my next adventure. I had absolute total peace, and I was happy to go, which makes no sense because my daughter was sleeping in the next room, and but I knew everything was going to be okay. It's almost like you were entering into that new dimension. You were closing the curtains behind, and you were going to a new horizon, a new adventure, a new lifestyle. And that's all it was. It was not like, oh my gosh, I am just dead. Or absolutely not. Everything seems totally normal. And they said, it's time to go. And I said, yeah, it's time. And I went in between them, and then we went inside that spaceship of light. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's really what happened. It's not crazy. I have met two other people in my 15 years with IANS. I have met two other people that had that similar experience. One was in the hospital between life and death. She code blue, and we were so happy. We found each other at the IANS in Scottsdale, and we shared that story, and we didn't dare to share it to others because we think that's totally different than everybody. And but it was so nice to meet somebody that had that experience as well. So we entered that spaceship of light, and it closed above us, very sleek, very modern, like white, pearly white like that, and then it closed, and in one, and then the being next to me, to my right, with his left hand, touched something, and in 1 second, when I say 1 second, I literally say 1 second, we crossed the entire universe, and we arrived in that very little place. It was just amazing. And there were about 20 beings of light waiting for me. They did not have the white robe. They looked more like normal outfit, but they were inside. It was not flesh or um, just a moment. Inside, whenever I talk about things that is emotional, it's getting really emotional for me because I relive it, and it's really strong. So inside their body, they were made of light. There was no bones, there was no blood, and they were just welcoming me. Like I felt like I was going back home. I was home. This was home. This was my real home. Earth was another story. And here I was with my family, with everyone, and they were so happy to see me. They were so excited. They were like, she's here, she's back. She's here, she's back. And, you know, in my Christian doctrine, we were just never existed. And we were just born on earth, and then we would evolve. But then the fact that they said she's back, later on when I came back, made me realize that actually I existed before I came to earth. And it felt like I was back home. I was going back home there. And they all welcomed me. We went inside a very little place. They had like type of furniture, but everything was made of light. And they were just so happy to see me, to catch up with me. And we catch up. I was telling them about Earth. They were telling me about her home. And at some point, one of the lady, she actually came out of the group. She was a female being, and she put her hands like that on my head, and she said, Yvonne, your experience on planet Earth is such a difficult one. And I said, it is so hard. I said, it's so difficult because I was in that situation of with my ex-husband, and I had just left, and I was in that new country. So it was really hard. It was a really hard time. And she said, but you have to go back before that vehicle, that container on Earth cannot welcome you back. You need to finish. Like I had to finish my life, finish my mission. And when she said that, those two beings were back. And the same way we went there, I went in between them. We went back into that spaceship of light. It closed behind on us just the same way. And in 1 second, we had crossed the universe, and I felt all the dimension, and I felt coming back into my body. I have to say that I was excited because I was already open to the spiritual realm through my Christian background. I was in a church that you call charismatic, which means that they were already open to the supernatural. So it wasn't like, for me, it was a good news for me because those two beings, I said, I've seen angels, and, I was just excited. And so when I came back, about 2 or 3 weeks later, it's almost like 2 or 3 weeks later, I had my second NDE, and I always laugh because I always think that the first one was like they were trying to encourage me you're going to be okay, go back, finish your mission. But it wasn't enough, so they had to give me a booster. So because even though I was back, I was still exhausted. I was still, not in a good place, and my heart was still racing. It was becoming really difficult. So about 3 weeks later, I am in the afternoon. I am reading in the living room when I did feel my heart started to race, but at the same moment, at the same time as that's what's happening, and I, I felt like organs were shutting down, and I was instantly in the light. I don't remember what happened physically because I was instantly in the light. So here I am, completely in the light, and it's just pure bliss, pure joy, pure kindness, pure peace. It is like I am. I have to get back to. It's like I am finally, after all that life, and I didn't plan of crying. I am finally in the most loving light, because in a way I had never received love from my mom, my dad, and the relationships were not great. And but for the first time, I just could feel that all-encompassing love, that whole the unconditional love, the kindness, the utmost feeling of joy, and happiness that even doesn't exist probably on Earth or in any other planets or dimensions, because when you're in the light, you are in the highest level of all consciousness, of all love, of all, everything is the highest level, all happiness, all peace. You are inside the highest level of everything you can feel, but the positive one, the good one, anything negative and stressful had left my entire being. I was just basking in that embracing light, in that loving light that was welcoming me home. And it was the most beautiful moment. And while I'm in that beautiful place, suddenly from a distance coming towards me, I see that amazing being. It's actually translucent. Just a moment. I need to I'll take this one here. Mhm. I see that being who is the most beautiful being. He's actually translucent, and it is actually hovering and sliding, gliding in the air from a distance. It is actually, you cannot make up the feature. It's just a being without outlines, and just legs and arms, but just going into the nothingness like that. It's not, you don't see fingers. His face has no shape yet. And it's just flying or hovering and coming towards me with the most elegant way and the most beautiful, gentle way it comes to me. And as it arrives towards me, it goes above me and look at me like a mother look at their firstborn child. And it's just so impressed by what it's saying. It looked at me and it just take my head, look at me, touch me everywhere. And I have to say that in the purest way. It kissed my face and my lips. And even though I'm in that spirit world and I'm a being of light, I still feel those emotions in my face and my skin, even though I'm probably just pure light. And just like a mother kissed their baby, and then it engulfed me. But I can still see that being. It was just above me like that, and was looking at me. And then as it looked at me, little by little, I can make a feature in the eyes, the nose. It's showing me that it's a being, so that to make me comfortable. It's so the eyes appear, the nose appear, and everything appear, and then eventually it just engulfed me, embraced me like that, hold me so tight, and I feel the love of a mother and a father that I never had on earth. Sorry, I was just not planning that. I feel the utmost love that I had never felt of the ideal parents, the mother and the father, because I know that many of us that are listening, we have not had the ideal parents. So, but this was really the ideal parents, loving, caring feeling, goodness, affection, kindness. You know, it was just, it was all tenderness. It was all that, those feeling that he was engulfing me. And when I was finally whole like that, there was a voice, and I say the voice of the light or of God, that told me, this is Jesus. It's not me thinking of it or being big, or it's not because, and I have to be clear, it's not because of my faith background, because people always say that, oh, you saw Jesus because you were Christian. It's not true. I know friends that were Jewish, they saw Jesus. Some Christian never saw Jesus. So Buddha. I mean, it's not, in that world, there are many things we don't know. But one thing we know in that world is that we are not being trapped or cheated on and pretend, oh, you know what? It's not Jesus, but it looks like Jesus. I mean, how can that world is all true? There is no pretense. There is no making you feel like it's another being, but it's this being. This is for Earth, for our world here, where we are used to things that are deformed, that are actually twisted. But in that world, when they give you an information, that is the information. It's like if I go to heaven and I know a Jim here on Earth, when I arrive in heaven, I know it's Jim. I know it's not Steve, or you know what I mean? That world, everything is true. And so when I have to say that, because I've heard a lot of time people saying, oh, it's because of your faith. It's not. My first, and there was no God or Jesus. And yet, you know, and was far from even thinking of going in a spaceship. Like I was a Christian, and back then, spaceship and everything was from the devil. So for me, I had never even thought of that at all. So, so here I am in Jesus' arms, and I feel that unconditional love. I feel that how can I say, the parental love, and I'm just like, this is it. I'm in my parents' arm. Nothing can happen to me. I'll be fine forever. I'm feeling whole. I'm feeling well, and I'm home finally. And at that moment, while I was thinking of that, as uh, in that world, it's everything is telepathic, but it's also instant. It's like instead of us communicating telepathically from one thought to another, it's actually instant. It's from a knowing to a knowing. I know, I know, I know. We don't need to be told what we know instantly. And I knew that at some point I would have to come back to Earth. So even though I was in that basking in that eternal love, eternal kindness, eternal gentleness, I knew somehow you're gonna have to go back home on Earth. And so I asked Jesus at that time. I said, back then and as I said to everyone, I was dating again a guy, a Christian one. And and I have to say that because in the Christian world back then, I don't know if it's still true today, but we always pray that God send us the right husband, the right wife. And we're always afraid that we're not doing God's will. And when we meet somebody, we say, is it God's will? Is he the one that God sent me, or is he not? And sometimes, and we're in that anxiety of not knowing if we're doing the will of God. Most of the time, there are many things we're always afraid. This is the will of God. Are we in the will of God? And we build up all that anxiety, which I've learned with time that after my NDE that the will of God is that you're happy, that you feel in your heart happiness, and that you feel loved, and you feel that you're in a good place. Because I've seen my sister, for example, she stayed in a very sad relationship because the church was telling her, oh, you have to stay, it's the will of God. And so I was in that mindset as well, and it wasn't working again with, I'll call him Steve. It wasn't working with Steve again, and I asked Jesus, if you make me go back to earth, and all that happens instant. It's not like we are conversing. It's all happening instant in the mind, in the place. I asked Jesus, if you make me go back to earth, what do I have to do with Steve? Do I have to stay with him? Because I was in that mindset, is it the will of God? Is it not the will of God? And at that time, Jesus lifted up in the air. And when he lifted in the air, he actually open, so he's bright, everything is bright, and he opens that bright screen, and there were two windows, and there was a yes and a no. And so he's shifting the air himself, and he becomes more he more consistent. I mean, more he actually now has a robe. I can see a robe of light. I can see more feature like we have. And then he opened and he said, you have to say no. Say no to the relationship. Say no. And then he ticked on the no, like we tick on the form. And so I asked Jesus, why does Steve is so mean to me with his words all the time when he's upset? Why is he so mean? Why is he, when we have a conflict? And Jesus came back from that screen, and he came back and he put himself more in the background like that in front of me. And he said, it's because Steve has decided to live his life on earth through his mind. To experience his life on earth through his mind primarily. You have chosen to lead your life on earth, to experience your life on earth through your heart. And it was not that I was, and I always say that I wasn't, oh my gosh, Yvonne is so much better because she walks through her heart in life, and Steve through her mind. No, he was totally neutral. It was like when you Google, I always say that it's like you Google something. He was in the background and totally neutral. And I asked a question, he just answered without judgment, without thinking, oh, Steve is so much better, or you are much better. It was like, while he was explaining that to me, instantly, it was like, the time over there, it's almost like it's stacked. We all have that linear time, but he was explaining 4 or 5 things at the same time, and it was all happening instantly. So while he was explaining that Steve, that he was showing me how much love he had for Steve, that was the same as for me, because love was love. Love was the same for everyone. Love is encompassing everyone and every different variety of personalities. And so he was explaining all those information while he was telling me to say no to Steve. And because it was not going to work, we came from 2 different aspects. We would clash because we were not in the same space in our experience in life. So, because, and after that, I actually asked a few other questions, and I love always to say this one. I asked Jesus why people are racist on earth, because obviously I have chosen to come on earth and be of a different color, living in a Caucasian world, whether it was in Europe or in the US. And for me, it was not that I was I was like, well, why are people? No, I was completely detached from earth. I was completely detached. And it was a very, very far planet. somewhere in maybe 2 or 3 galaxies away. I mean, for me, that's how far it felt. And I had no emotion. I was just asking that in a very informative way, like you ask, is there water on Mars? You know what I mean? I was just asking a question. Why are people racist on that planet, on Earth? Why? And, you know, I would never have said that, but Jesus said, very neutral, without condemnation and judgment again. It was like you Google, you get the answer. He said, it's because it's because of their self-centeredness. I would never have thought that. I would have thought, upbringing, area, trauma of one of the race that has harmed you, or the way you were raised, the country. I mean, I would have said all kind of different, but not self-centeredness. I was like, what? And Jesus explained that when you're self-centered, everything around you has to remind you of you. You want things that remind you of yourself. So if you want to surround yourself with people that are like you and remembers, and if it's something different, then there's fear, and it's because on Earth we base our life, we want to survive. It's a survival planet here on Earth. It's not an easy one. It's a very brutal planet, very violent. And so we want to survive. So every efforts are made to be on us to survive. And in that effort, we actually surround ourselves with people that remind us of us. And everything that's not like us, we kind of reject and put away, or even don't make the effort to get to know. However, if we would make an effort to get to know others, then we would be actually in such a we would rise from within. I have suffered a lot of racism, but not that much, because I've always been with amazing people. But for me, it was really a new information. So after that, he came back to my left, and we are in the light, and we are little by little progressing outside of the light. So that light, it's like almost a transition place. I don't know if, or we were in God's or the light, and then we go into another place, and that actually light disappear. It's not disappear. It's like we're getting really out of it. And as we are walking out of it, in front of me, I see the most beautiful city. It's a crystal city, and it has huge building made of crystal, very wide avenue. The sky is just the most amazing blue. There's no sun. It's just glorious, bright light, and the buildings are really white, but they look like gold, but the whitest gold or something. It's just the most beautiful place. And as we are progressing there quickly to walk, I feel some children coming to my right. I feel people coming to my right. So when I turn around, I see children, angels. And these one were angels because they had small wings in the back. So they were closed. They were small. They were not big, open. They were closed. In that world, we have so many beings, so many different beings, and that exist, entities. But the first one I saw were not angels. They were just beings in my first NDE. But these one here definitely were. And they had a long white robe. They had a circular face, silvery hair. And they were about a dozen, walking very, very quickly. In that world, everything was really vibrant. And they were walking quickly, and one turned towards me and then turned towards Jesus. And when they saw Jesus, because for me, it was almost normal to see me there. It was not a big deal. But when they saw Jesus, one of them, their face really shone. It became pure light. He became a sphere of light. and he became a sphere of light, um, and they all ran into Jesus' arms. They all ran into his arms, and he took them all into his arms, all of them, all the 12 ones, and he loved them, and they were all happy and joyful, and just the most amazing. And Jesus said to them, and he said that, I oftentimes skip that in the past, but I'm just going to say it. He said to this children angel, he said, go back to your mothers. People said, well, oh, angels don't have mothers. In that world, we don't have. That's exactly what Jesus said. He said, go back to your mothers. And I guess it's not mother like we have in the flesh or something. It's maybe their supervisor. I don't know. But he said, go back to your mothers. It's Yvonne's time. It's Yvonne's moment. It's Yvonne's moment. Go back, but with a lot of love and no rejection. It was all inclusive. And so when he said that, I looked where they were going, and I saw that I saw a dozen of magnificent beings of light. They were more female looking. They had really long hair until under the knees, and they were just the most white robe and all kind of different pastel colors. They were about 7 or 8 foot high, and they were just standing there, amazing. And they were looking at me with so much love and so much reverence. And that's the beauty of home. In that world, everybody is respected. Everybody has reverence for one another. The other person in that world is the highlight. It's not us, it's them. And we want to serve them, we want to help them. In my first NDE, when I reconnected with my group, my soul group, they were all trying to do the best for me. Like I was the most important being in their life. And everybody treats each other like that in that world, which is totally the opposite on this earth, on this planet. This planet is like me first and then the other ones after. In that world, everybody comes together to see if you have a project. Everybody will actually come together to make to help you achieve what you want to achieve. In this earth, everybody is using everybody to achieve what they want to achieve. You know what I mean? And it's another concept. So when I saw those angels, they were also angels. They had wings closed, and they looked at me, and because they were tiny, and I realized later why. I've always seen, just a moment. I've always seen angels that are with their being wings when I was on Earth. Everybody, and then I thought to myself, that's our open wings, but you don't need to open wings when you're not. I don't know why, but they had very small here in the back. And so when I looked at those women's angels, magnificent being, they telepathically told me, Yvonne, you are home. You are one of us. We will never harm you. We will never hurt you. Because this is home. This is your home. This is our home. And you know how I suffered all my life, many things. That was probably the thing I had to hear. So it was, you're home. At that moment, I didn't want to go back to Earth. And I said to Jesus, I don't want to go back to Earth. This is home. I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay. This is home. And I said, I don't want to go back to Earth. It's a violent planet. It's very violent over there. There are many, many people that are selfish, that don't think of any other people. They don't care about others. I cannot relate to that planet. I cannot relate to the way that planet functions. I want to stay here. And when Jesus actually was looking at me, like I know I hear your pain, but that's the way it's gonna be. It was hard because I did not want to come back. I was just like, and he said it was most like, there's nothing I can do. You'll have to go back. And so that was a message, even though he was not speaking. And I said, well, if you send me back to earth, I cannot go back into that body. It's beyond repair. That container is beyond repair. And then I said to him, if you send me, and I could feel that it wasn't working. So I said, if you send me back, I will be beyond exhaustion. I can do it. I can do it. It's been a long life. I will be beyond exhaustion. And when I said that, instead of him saying, welcome home, my daughter, you can stay, he actually shifted in the air again. And we shifted in another space. We went into a black velvety space, like the universe without stars. We were in that black velvety, very warm, not frightening at all, black velvety space. And Jesus expanded. He expanded high. He became as high as half a mile high in that universe without star space type of thing. And he becomes so big that everything in his body feels like fields of energy. He's like a hologram, like a solid hologram. And he's immense. It's extremely impressive, I can tell you that. And I can still see his eyes on me, looking at me from there. And then he says, Yvonne, I will give you my strength, give you my power. I will give you my energy of life. Because I had said I am beyond exhaustion, so I guess, and when he said that, he actually said, lift your hand. I lifted my hand. So just a beautiful moment. And then he put his hands like that on me. Even though he was far, it's all energy. So he could actually, he was beaming energy. So I could feel his energy touching my energy. And a rush, a cascade, a flash of sparkling white gold, dry, wet, I don't know how to say it, energy like came in me and filled everything I was. It filled my bones, my cells, my muscles. I could feel it actually. I could feel it filling all these places, the bones, the nerves, the muscles, every cell that I had. I could feel that sparkling life energy coming and feeling everything I was in the spirit world and in my body on earth. I could feel it. And for some reason, it stopped at my ankle. I don't know why, I will never know why. But that re-energizing, sparkling energy re-energized me. And then he came back from that place, and then he said, he came in the back and he puts his arms around me, and he said, Yvonne, I love Yvonne, I love humanity. I love everyone. And it's so moving to me because I know that on this earth, his name has been used in all kind of ways to damage people's heart and people's life, and to actually crush people with manipulation and control. And even people use it for their own fame. But I mean, when you are with Christ, with Jesus, there's nothing of that. There's no condemnation. There's no guilt. There's no, he's love. He's above religion. He's not even thinking, oh, you should be at church or you should not be. There's nothing about that. That's more for our earthly level. Every religion, I think, is helping people connect with God and with Source, with the light. But he was above it. He was unconditional love, no judgment, just pure love. And he said to me, I love everybody. I love humanity. I love my babies. And I did think to myself, well, you're Jesus. You came on earth to love everyone unconditionally, so it makes sense. I was thinking that because when you're in that world, you still keep your thinking ability. You're not just like a being with no thoughts or anything. You're a very conscious being. I mean, you think, you analyze just the same way we are doing here. And I was thinking, well, Jesus, you came on earth to show us God's unconditional love for everyone, show us a way of love that to everyone, and non-judgment, but hope and courage and positive. And he said, I'll show you how I love. I'll show you how I love. And he took my heart. He took my heart. It took the end, and he put it in his and merged me with his heart. So we became one. Like there's a scripture that says that in John, I've never been good with where everything was, but it's in John. Jesus said to God, let there be one. Let there be one, like you and I are one. And it's that same oneness that I felt with Jesus. I was one with Jesus. And it was like we were one. He was me, I was him. And he made that possible just for an instant for me to feel what he felt, the love he felt for everything and everyone, for humanity, for dimension, planets, animals, everything, because he was love. He was pure love. And that's all he could do, because he was unconditional love. And that's what I want to try to convey here today, is that that's what Christ is. And many people are afraid of that unconditional love expands because of all the hurts we've had, all the the betrayals we have had since birth, all the we've been betrayed, we've been hurt, we have been lied to, we have hurt, we have lied, because we had to survive in this world that's a very challenging planet. With our, we have our health that is not always good, and that's why we had NDEs. We had, it's not an easy planet. And sometimes I feel like we are condemning ourselves too much. We're making ourselves feel guilty, and we regret all kinds of things. And we actually spend all our thoughts in regretting things. And while we're just not, I didn't even feel Christ was in that space at all. It was like a long time ago, and that's for another time. I saw him in person in this planet, and I had that guilt in me, and he was just looking at me like, what? Why are you making yourself so miserable? He couldn't understand, because love doesn't do that. And so when he put my heart into his heart, I did feel the explosion of myriads and myriads of emotions of love, compassion, goodness, kindness, service, joy, laughter, everything that was love. I could feel it. And what I'm explaining here is so pale compared to the real experience. But I just was one with love. And it's difficult to express here, and that's why I cannot go into details, because I don't think the details exist on this planet. And but it was just like the absolute love of everything and everyone, because we were all connected into that same bosom of love. And then he demerged me, and he said, Yvonne, he didn't say that, but I knew it was time to leave, that my time in that place was up, and it was time for me to go back. And And then I could tell that he was just kind of by, but he was so much love. But it was like, it's over, you go back now, you go back. And I did feel myself coming back from all the dimension, from different dimension, coming back progressively into my body. And then shoop, I was back in my body. And I just was thanking God. I was like, oh my God, this is such an honor. I said that to have experienced that. I've experienced many other things in the later after that too, but that was my 2 NDEs, and I know I've been long, and I apologize for that. So that I hope you have enjoyed, and I have brought you something, and have made you feel that love for you personally, that you have been able to be touched by that unconditional love.